Well, we're here again. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays. We're really happy to be coming together again to be doing this special Christmas episode with all of you to talk through, as we have for the past couple years, the 12 questions of Christmas. We've got some old questions that we've done before. We've got some new questions that we're bringing to the table. I'm here, DM Mitch, joined with...
It's me, DM Neil, a.k.a. Jote Maniac.
And I'm DM Chris, a.k.a. DM Chris.
And here we are again. Last year we did kind of a little bit different of an episode. We did the end of the year campfire. I think that was intentional because 2020 was just such a year. But here we are. We're back doing our Christmas episode of the DMB, a very Merry DMB Christmas, whatever. We were talking before the show. Is this 7? Is this 8? We don't know. We're so into podcasting now that we've lost track of the years. But yeah.
Well, what's crazy about that? We're coming up in 2 years on 10 years or something like that. Oh my gosh,
I don't even believe that. That's insane to me.
That's crazy.
It's that weird place where it seems like it's like it's been that long, but at the same time, like I go, well, can you remember not doing podcasting? Right? And I'm like, I don't know. Like it's just the life now, right? But anyway, we've got our 12 questions of Christmas, and we don't want to waste any more time. Let's dive into those questions. So let's start out with question number 1. And Chris, why don't we start with you this year? We'll go Neil, and then I'll round us off since I'll be asking the questions. So the first question, Chris, is what was your favorite episode from the Dungeon Masters block in 2021?
Yeah, my favorite episode was episode 226, which was Biomods with Jeff Barber. That was one of my favorite conversations that we had on the year of like, how could you incorporate weird mutations into your characters that were like purposely done to modify your characters? Because he wrote the book. Neil, help me out with what the
Blue Planet.
That's what it was. Yeah. Yes, and he was fantastic, a ton of fun to talk to. I remember him being super nervous about being on and being like, I'm not a guy for podcasting. I was like, how are you not a guy for podcasting? Because you were super great at that, you know?
Well, yeah, which is so funny because he's a teacher. I'm like,
I know. Exactly. So I think that was one of my favorite ones, just from the perspective of like thinking about how you can spice up play, because every character is usually like 2 arms and 2 legs, but like how do you make those things even more interesting with giving some sort of bio modification to them was super fun. That was my favorite episode.
That was definitely a podcast too that was like years that like it was just we had to get to it at some point, right? Because we can thank Rich Howard for this, but Blue Planet has been mentioned on this podcast numerous times from the very first time that I think Rich joined us, which would have been our first year. So it had to happen eventually.
Yep, for sure.
What about you, Neil?
So I think I didn't look up the number, but if memory serves, I think it's actually the next episode. It's 227, where we got cross-interviewed by Matthew Lillard.
Yes, that was me and you. That was
it was so random that he basically just the idea in his head was like, well, if you guys are going to just ask me a bunch of questions, well, then I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions too.
That was also the episode, Neil, where he had so much like internet troubles, because that was right when everybody was still kind of at home doing at home.
Oh yeah, he was at home. He was getting crazy looks from his kids, so he moved rooms 3 times. Yeah, so I mean, I guess there's a little insider baseball of just like it was such an enjoyable experience to make that episode, and then also very funny to hear. And I know some of our listeners commented as well of how interesting it was that the interviewee just flipped it and was just like, well, hey, what are you guys doing? What's going on with you? And it's like,
what you eating over there?
That's not how this works.
Mitch, what about for you? What was your favorite episode from the year?
I guess kind of to keep the little bit of insider baseball thing going, and I mean that's kind of our next question too, but specifically for my favorite episode, I don't know about you guys, but there are definitely episodes for me that sometimes I'm not like super excited to record, and typically for me it comes down to a topic that I personally feel like I don't have enough knowledge or anything to bring to the table with that conversation. And one of those episodes that I was kind of like, like I just was like, how are we going to make this into an episode? How are we going to have good discussion based off of this? Was episode 233, Low to No Combat Campaigns, with Paul Shapiro and Charlie Rahor. And I just went into that episode going, man, like I love this concept, and I think I DM'd this concept fairly well, but I was just sitting at a point. I remember telling you, Neil, I don't know how we make this into an episode topic. And I was so afraid of dead air. And it just turned into one of the best. For me, it was my favorite episode, my favorite conversation of the entire year. And honestly, that really has a lot to do with Paul and Charlie and their expertise. And they kind of got the juices, flowing for me and Neil as well, and being able to dive in and talk more about that. But it's partially my favorite because it's such good content, and also partially my favorite because going into it, I was like, how are we going to do this? What are we going to talk about? So, a little insider baseball there. But speaking of little insider baseball, our next question, number 2, is what was your favorite off-air moment for the DMB, this podcast in 2021? Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think my favorite off-air moment was, so I have a group of players that have been playing together for a couple years now, but it's like over half of the group's like first time playing, and they've just wanted to like soak up everything about D&D. Not all of them, but a good couple of them do. And it's funny how many times I'll say something on an episode and then they'll be like, oh, you talked about that in the last episode. Like when we did the weather episode, it was like, oh, you started incorporating weather more. And then it was like 2 or 3 sessions later where they were like,
surprise, we learned from podcasting, right?
You started putting weather into your, so like those sorts of moments where it was like, okay, I really have to be careful now what I say on the podcast because my players listen to everything. That was just funny to me because it's like I love watching people, even though they're not even DMs, just like loving everything to do with D&D, because it does. And one of the questions I'll ask later, I'll expound on this a little bit more, but it just creates such a fun community for people to be a part of, including my own players who, gosh dang it, now I have to keep under wraps the things that I talk about on here.
We got to do some like specific to your players redacted episodes where it's like,
right. Yeah.
It just bleeps out certain things that you say. That's awesome. Neil, what about you?
I like the idea. You're making a private feed where like you guys can listen to this. You can't listen to the.
I'm going to be honest. That sounds like so much work.
Oh yeah, 100% kidding. Like if you want to do that, Chris, go for it. But my players can just listen and whatever.
I'll redact myself from saying things.
What do you think, Neil?
Oh, it's pretty close because, like, we get, full transparency. Obviously, like we get the review copies of things and promotional stuff. So the one that we got that ended up being the most fun was that we got the D&D and Nerds promotional stuff, and like my kids went over the moon. So they're 5 and 7, and so we've been playing through that. And like I've literally like gone to the store to buy Nerds, to like old school like cut my cereal box top, and basically you have to upload your receipt for the Nerds proving you bought it. And now I've got all 6 adventures with individual characters and the 7th culminating adventure, and so we've started to go through those together, and like I use the Nerds gummy clusters as the monsters and then they kill them and they're like, I'm gonna eat what I kill. So yeah, that's probably the highlight. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's super cool. Mitch, what about you?
For me, it's honestly, so the beginning of this year, for me, my favorite episode was pretty easy for me to pick because I looked back at this year and I wasn't in a ton. And that was because in my own like personal life, like I was making a move across the country. I was changing jobs. I had a lot going on. And my favorite off-air moment was like while I was going through that, I reached this point where I had to say to the two of you, like, guys, I can't be doing podcasting right now. There's just so much going on. And like just you both just stepping up and being like, no problem. Like we got this. And I know each of us have done that. Like when something's happened in our lives, it's like, I can't focus on this right now. We're always do that. But it is just such a nice thing to be able to go, I can take a step back and know that you guys are taking the show and just running it and doing it well. And that was something for me that it's like I still appreciate that. So that, and then also just being able to get back into it as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's the beauty of having.
We didn't close the door behind you. Yeah.
Finally,
all the passwords have changed. I can't get. They don't answer my text anymore.
Weird. Yeah, I think that's the beauty of having this group is like we've all done that at different, like when I had a child, I stepped away for a little while. Like when I moved here, I stepped away for a little while to Illinois. You know, like we've all done that at various different times, and it's nice having this group to be able to do that.
Yeah, I
so
mean,
we can
Chris,
still bring content.
At one point, you were like, "I can't do podcasting anymore. Period. See you later," and we were so sad. We had a goodbye episode for you, but it's nice to have you back.
Well, that was because of master's degrees and working multiple jobs and all that sort of crazy stuff. So, yeah.
So goodbye may never be the end for any of us. We'll see.
Never say goodbye. It's just always see you later. Thanks, John.
See you later. That's it. All right. Question number 3 is, what was your favorite moment out of your D&D adventures in 2021? Chris.
We had a good stretch for a while. So we started playing just before COVID with the group, and then everything shut down for a while, and we didn't play for a little while because we were like, well, we're going to be back in person. Like everybody was all over the place with everything. So we didn't do online for a long time. Like we might have taken like a 4 or 5 month break from everything, but we got a consistent string again, like towards the fall of last year into the spring. And I remember it was like early spring where really felt like everybody started to get like the mechanics of their characters down, like the backstories of their characters down, so on and so forth. At one point, there was a fight. They were in the Shadowfell, and there was some wyverns that had been corrupted by the shadows that were there, and they had found a ring of spell storing just beforehand. We have a cleric who had stored some spells in the ring, and one of our sorcerer had just learned how to Misty Step. And so the wyverns are flying around doing their whole thing. They're in this like weird swampy area, and our cleric goes down, and everybody's super low health. Like we're like, oh crap, this is gonna be a TPK. Like what's happening? And my player's like, can I use Misty Step like as a bonus action and just like get over to our cleric here and use the ring of spell storing to like heal him? I was like, yes, you can. You can do that. And just to like watch his face light up, because he had been a sorcerer, and he's kind of like, am I just a magic missile person? Like, is that all I am? Like, am I magic missile and burning hands, you know, like still trying to figure out sorcerer points and everything. And for him to like feel, oh, this character could be played in so many different ways because of this ring and this misty, like just watching his face light up because of the possibilities. And that also like clicked for the rest of our players too, of like, oh, there are really cool things that we can do when we combine our abilities as characters. And so that was like the moment where I think everybody was like, boom, okay, I love this game. Like this is super fun. Awesome. And all of them remember that fight to this day of how Keltan, the sorcerer, Misty stepped and healed, you know, as the cleric, because the cleric went like, it's a legend. So it was super cool.
That's awesome. What about you, Neil?
I think for me it was that I repurposed a Kraken model from a different board game. It just happened to fit in the campaign that I was doing, but part of it was also like I haven't really painted anything in a really long time, but I was like, but if I'm going to bring this model from this game into my own game, like it's got to be painted. So then like I went through just like relearning to paint miniatures, and it turned out way better than I was expecting. Like dove into like these like translucent almost like paint that people use for scales. I also used water effects for the first time, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is why people just like spend hours doing this, because like if you can get to that end product, like it is really worth that time investment. So that was probably one of the more fun moments, because the Kraken was also tearing apart the ship they were on, so it was like a time issue as well. So they were definitely super stressed out. Of course, when I also bring a giant painted Kraken, there's just the level of stress automatically
when
increases.
You plop that down on the table, it's such a good DM feeling.
Ooh,
right?
DM got a new toy. That's what it always is with minis. The minute you get a mini, it's like, how can I get this in my campaign?
Yeah.
Well, and what worked really well is like because of the way that board game worked, it really worked with the way the story was for the campaign, because the tentacles are what's arriving first.
Mm-hmm.
They're in the hold, they're trying to get a special item, and now they're getting out and tentacles are popping through. But because of the way it was for the board game, I actually had tentacle figures, and then later could drop the whole creature, the head and everything like that. So yeah, they were a little scared. It worked out. They're fine.
I was gonna say, at least they didn't like skip over the Kraken.
Those are the minis you gotta hide, right? Like if you get like a pack of gnolls because you have a gnoll battle coming up, like whatever. You put the gnolls in front of the players, they don't even notice, but they're gonna notice the giant Kraken mini you're painting. I remember getting the falling starship and like hiding that in my closet for months, waiting to be able to pull it out and drop it on the table. It's just you don't want them to see it before you put it out there. So
no, definitely not. What about you, Mitch?
For me, I said like we moved across the country, so with that comes the bittersweet of mostly just bitter with that, but saying goodbye to my home group from back in Michigan, playing with them for the last time in person for a long time, if just for good, and so we got to finish a 2-year campaign with that group, and some of those players I had been playing with for over 10 years in my world of Atos, and that 2 years with that campaign, part of that was through, Chris, you mentioned this a little bit, but through COVID and through playing in person, then online, and getting back together safely in person, and so when it became clear I was moving, we really were like, all right, well, we want to finish this and we want to finish it well. So we started playing rather than every week, and just really diving into it. And it was probably my favorite campaign to date, my favorite end of a campaign to date, and my favorite epilogue. Chris, were you there on the last night we played?
I was there on the last night, yeah.
Yeah, and so you even though you live in Chicago and not in Michigan anymore, you came over and you played with us for that last game night. But yeah, it just the culmination of not just a 2-year campaign, but a 2-year campaign that we were going through some tough stuff in real life, and with some friends that I have played D&D with for 10 years. That was very special, and the campaign was just fantastic. So that was my favorite. Number 4, what was the coolest RPG item in or out of game you received during 2021? Chris?
I think it was shortly before 2021, but I think after the last Christmas episode. And I think it was 2020, but then again, the last 2 years have kind of blended together. So who the heck knows? Yeah. But it was actually the horn that you got me for Christmas one year. I think that was last year. Was that last year? Or
yes.
Yeah, I think so. That you had gotten for me, because
the horn, that makes no sense to our listeners.
The drinking horn is what it is. Yeah. So that's that. I use it pretty much every week. It's either that or a stein that I have for drinking stuff out of, and like it's super cool. It's one of those like players know when the drinking horn comes out, it's time for D&D sort of thing, So that's by far my favorite thing that I've received over the past year.
Makes me happy.
So yeah, it was super cool.
What about you, Neil?
I love my drinking horn as well. No.
Neil's like,
but I used it to stab people. The other one that was like trying to get more stuff for the kids and get them engaged. So one of the most fun things has been like watching them try and figure out what like dice bags they want them to be. So we were at the local game store, and there was a snowy owl bear that can hold dice, and so that's what my daughter wanted. And so like it was really funny because it looks like a stuffed animal, and then like you can open the middle, and like she just got so gruesome and dark with it. I was just like, she's like, oh, I killed it and I can take its insides out. I'm like, no, it's just a dice bag. We don't have to say all these terrifying things, child. But yeah, the snowy owlbear dice bag.
Fantastic. For me, it was a Christmas gift from last year as well, but it was given to me in 2021 in January when my D&D group got back together. So this isn't cheating. But fans of the show will know #MagicMark. He made for me a custom. He built it himself. Wooden DM screen, and not only is that a cool thing to have, but it's just meaningful, especially now having moved away from Michigan. That it's something I got to take with me from one of my players back in Michigan. So definitely my favorite. And then number 5, what was your favorite RPG book of 2021? Chris, what do you think?
Mine was Fizbin's. I really love dragons, and so I had been looking to either create create stats for a dragon that the characters had run into, but none of them quite fit that. And so I was just like throwing the name Shadow in front of the dragon, and tweaking a few stats. But then it had in it a dragon that now has the stats for if they ever come across this dragon again. And it was just like, it was so well timed, and it's just got so many like fun different types of dragons. I was like, oh, that'd be so much fun to like throw those things in there. It just gave me so many fun ideas, and the artwork was beautiful, and that was my favorite RPG.
Yeah, I'm just gonna
2021.
I'm just gonna jump right over Neil and just say mine too. That was my answer. Fizbin's was my favorite by far. Like you said, Chris, I mean, dragons are fantastic, and the dragons we got in that book, including the new Dragonborns, were just like, I say this in a good way, they're so weird and out there. And yeah, the monster section of that book, super fun. Fizbin's was my favorite as well.
Yep.
Now, Neil, you tell us why Fizbin's was your favorite.
So Fizbin's. No. So 2 I had, well, I have 2 because 1 is so far out there. Drakar och Demoner, the Monster Balkan, because it was a Kickstarter I followed because it was, the art was from an artist I loved, but it's basically translates to Dragons and Demons monster book. But it was just, I loved the art, and so then I got it to be inspired by that. But the other big one is Thrones and Bones, Norengard, from Luanders, getting that book in hand. Just having seen so much of it because of how close we all are now to Lou over the years, like just seeing that as it's progressed and hearing about it so early in the process, and then to have that physically in hand. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I already gave my answer. So question number 6, a returning question over the years. What 2021 movie is the greatest inspiration for a D&D campaign? Chris.
Oh, I read that wrong. I took it for inspiration for my campaign, so I'm going to answer it based off of that.
Based off of that, man. Your interpretation.
Yeah. So the one that got me rethinking about the villain that the players are running into over and over again in my campaign, the movie that helped me craft some of the backstory was actually Cruella from Disney Plus. Just from the standpoint of like, I really appreciated how they made her a likable villain. And although my players have not come up against a ton of the backstory of this character yet, like the stuff that I've written for this person's backstory, this character's backstory, that just was like perfectly timed for when they were coming up against this character for like the first real time. And just thinking through like, how do I make them sympathetic and also still hate this person at the same time? Because they did that with both people in Cruella, both Cruella and whatever her arch enemy, other fashion person was,
Baroness, right?
Yeah, the Baroness. Yeah. So they did that with both of them, and I thought that was just like, it was really cool to see the layers of like how tragedy can warp people in ways that like they can't control, you know. So I think that was why it was a great inspiration for me, just to keep me thinking in that train of thought.
Neil, what do you think?
So the answer to this question always like isn't what is the greatest movie of 2021?
No,
like that's
absolutely
never
not.
how this works. So my answer is Mortal Kombat.
Wait, you don't think that was the greatest movie?
No. Because I ask myself every time I watch it, or every
time you watch it, you watched it more than once?
Nope.
Yeah, you watched it more than once.
Just one time. Yeah, no. Well, I mean, I guess it holds true. Every time I watched it, the one time, I asked myself, why is the poster of Scorpion and Sub-Zero? Because they weren't really in it that much. But it does show like origin stories, people getting their powers. I mean, it's just, it's a quick hit of like how a story could be made, and then you're choosing what of those elements do you like, what don't you like, and then you could adapt that into its own D&D campaign.
Yeah. Just in case there's any like super duper fans of that movie out there, I just want to state that it was fine. It wasn't terrible. It was exactly what I expected of the Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, you're not going into it to be like, this thing's going to win a ton of awards.
I can't wait for a 10 plus like rating story to be told here. Yeah,
that's like the Expendables back in the day. Nobody went into that expecting that it was going to win a ton of awards. You went into it exactly why you wanted to go into it.
Yeah. The one that I would give, I honestly wrote like 2 down because I was like, somebody's going to take this one. Maybe it's you guys went a little bit off rather than picking the one that I feel like is the most obvious, and that's Shang-Chi. Honestly, Shang-Chi is phenomenal. I won't give spoilers, but like half the movie is like, the first half is like classic kung fu style movie, and then the second half is like high fantasy-esque. And it's amazing what they Marvel just keeps doing this thing where they take ideas that other movie makers would go, we can't do that, that's too weird, and Marvel's just like, nah, we're gonna do it and we're gonna make it awesome. And they certainly did that with the fantasy elements in that movie. I wish I had that movie to be inspired by with that previous 2-year campaign, because we were doing a lot of Japanese and Chinese inspired fantasy lore in that game, and that Shang-Chi just dives into that so well, and it's phenomenal. I won't say any more, but great movie. Question number 7. What was the greatest lesson from RPGs that you learned over the past year? Chris?
I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I just love how it can bring groups of people together that normally wouldn't hang out with each other. And just for the love of creating stories and games together, you end up that's not that my group wouldn't hang out together, but like I pulled them all together for D&D, and they're of various different ages, ranging from like 40s to like mid 20s, and it's like normally people like that don't hang out with each other, but bringing them together and being like, no, we're this crazy group of people, and like seeing how everybody like interacts in our group chat, like outside of like the couple days before leading up to it, and watching how they interact in the game and deal with consequences and work through situations, and just the memories that they've built, is especially over like COVID, where we weren't able to do a whole bunch of stuff until like this past summer, basically. It was just really cool to watch it give us stuff to do. And how I heard from like multiple people, like it was a great thing, and it was needed through that period of time to have a group and community that we knew we could look forward to being with in times where we couldn't be with a ton of people. So that's my greatest lesson that I've learned over the past year.
We did an episode, something along those lines of, I don't know what episode it was, but it was years ago I think it was with the Geek Preacher, on intergenerational like role playing, and I've found the same thing to be true. D&D has been an awesome place to get people of different age groups that typically would not interact with each other together, and interacting, and from there like interacting because they have this shared experience together, and it's fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
Neil?
So one of the ones I took away, and I feel like, I don't know if it's like COVID related, because like that importance on connecting with a smaller group of people and those things, but one that I realized, like, I don't know that I've focused on as much, and maybe it's the gray in my beard, but the idea that meeting your players where they are. There's been like a lot of focus on like, if it's not the right table for you, certainly you need to leave, but then in the same token, like, is the reverse of that, the players all needing to be at the table in the same way, at the same level. And it's just a realization that whatever level of importance the person puts on the game, like, that's okay. So like I have a player that doesn't, and like the realization I came to was like, that's okay. Like I don't care, because you're meeting this table and using this game the way you need to, and I should facilitate that as the person running it. And and everyone should be okay that you're engaging with it in the way that you can and the ways that you need to. So yeah, meeting the players where they are, rather than just like having a set of rules that all the players need to meet.
For me, this was one I had to think the hardest about. But what I landed on was cameos bring me as much joy as my players. I've talked about cameos plenty on the show before. The idea of like, Chris, you and me have played together for years, and we're playing in a campaign, and it's set 500 years in the future in my world, but you're just walking along and you come across a book that's written by a previous character of yours. Or it could be something even like more, hitting the nail on the head of like you meet a previous character kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Well, now I've moved across country and I have a whole different group of players. One of them isn't totally new. It's somebody I went to college with in Michigan, which is wonderful. So he will actually get some of the references. But I've been dropping references to previous player characters into my current campaign. And, you could say, why are you doing that? Because these players won't get that. But I find enjoyment of that. And it's carrying along those player characters because they were important to the world and to the story of the world that I've created. And for me, I might sit there and go, yeah, they don't know this player character from the previous campaigns, nor do they know the awesome person that was behind that player character choosing the choices that character was making, but I do. And it's something, nostalgia, I guess is the word, but just remembering that those times with that character at the table and with those people at the table, for me, even if nobody else is getting it, I still really enjoy it. So
cameos are fun. That's for sure.
Question number 8. What other RPGs or board games did you play in 2021? What other great RPGs or board games did you play?
My wife got really into the board game Pandemic. No joke. Just,
people either avoid that game like the plague, to make a pun, or ran to it with COVID.
Yeah, so I was glad when we switched off of that one. Like, I like it, but to play it like multiple times a week, I was just like, this is too much. It's too much. Yeah, she fell hard in the Pandemic. Yeah. So the other game that we got that was really fun was the game called Santorini. I don't know if you guys have played it before, but it's kind of like, it's like multi-layered chess. You play as like gods and stuff like that. So, so it's you do that, and then like you build up, and your characters have different powers, and like your whole goal is to get to the top of the tower before anybody else does while you're built. It's super fun. You should look it up. Each god character has different abilities, so the game changes every single time, and it's randomly drawn, and it's a blast. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Neil?
So mine is super quick. It's Monster Mayhem. It is. My kids love it. Everyone that we play loves it because like we played it just at Thanksgiving, because the rules of the game literally go down to draw a card, play a card. You know the game. Done. That's it. So like that's the whole game. I love it. It's so easy. People love it. And
it's a
Monster
fun
Mayhem.
Game. Yeah.
Buy it.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Nice quick party game. I literally just in the past week got this as a early Christmas gift. It's a game called Illimat. It is created, Chris, you both know it. Okay. It's created by the Decemberist and our friend Keith Baker, creator of Eberron. I've wanted this game for a long time because I love both the Decemberist and Keith Baker. And I got it, and it did not disappoint. It's one of those games where you lay it out and you're like, what the heck is going on? And then you start playing, you're like, this is really simple, but there's a lot of strategy that goes behind it, and the artwork is beautiful. It's phenomenal. It's a really good up to 4-player game.
Yeah,
easy to learn, difficult to master.
Yes.
It falls in that category
for sure.
Yeah.
Which are the best kind of games, right?
Yeah. Question number 9: What classic Christmas food would you like to see made into a fantasy dish served at the tavern your adventurers frequent? Chris.
This one immediately came to my mind. It's a dessert that my grandma makes called plum pudding.
Course.
Here's the thing, it has nothing to do with plums or pudding. I had zero idea why it's called that, but it's essentially like a raisin bread. It's a warm raisin bread that you put like a butter sauce over the top of it, and you eat it with a fork. I still don't know why it's called plum pudding. That's what we've always called it. And
so is that a your family thing, or is that like that's what it's called?
I'm sure it's I don't know. I have not cared enough.
So it's a play on bread pudding, where it's like, I don't know why it's called pudding. Like, it's not pudding.
Yeah. And we have raisins and not plums. I don't get it, but it's so good. And it would be like, it would pay homage to my grandma, even though she's still alive. Of just like, that'd be a super fun thing to have. Like, it's a homey thing that sounds like it would be in a tavern.
Absolutely. And also, when they order the plum pudding and they get it and it's not plum pudding.
Exactly.
All right, Neil, what do you think?
So I made it like a truly fantastical thing. So my brother-in-law, his wife is Jewish, and so we refer to each other as latkes, because it's like in-law. So she actually started making those at like, we helped her experience Christmas for the first time. She goes all in. She watches the movies with us. She like wears the outfits, but then she also makes matzo ball soup and latkes during the holidays for us. So my thought was the latkes, but then I also like the magic component is that it makes everyone follow the law, and that's why they're called latkes. Let's move on.
Oh gosh, love it. Mine's pretty simple, to be honest. I toyed around with a couple things, but I just think that you go into a tavern and like, you're playing D&D around the holidays, just having there be like maybe one or maybe an assortment of, we have like peppermint, special peppermint drinks on the menu. You know, like it's funny. I don't even like peppermint. I really don't like peppermint, but it's so like a Christmas thing to be like, there's peppermint lattes and peppermint this and peppermint that. And just, just like during Thanksgiving, it's pumpkin everything, right? I feel like having peppermint drinks on the menu at the tavern would be a really good way to implement Christmas, the holidays, into your tavern adventures. So, question number 10. How would you take a classic D&D monster and Christmasify it? Chris?
I would have something called a sleigh dragon, where the Santa Claus of the world, wherever you're playing, has a dragon with a big red nose that glows at night, and he rides on the top of it from town to town to deliver presents. Because what says Christmas more than a dragon with a red nose?
With a red nose. Does the red nose give the dragon any sort of mechanical advantage?
Nope.
No. Nope. But you have to describe it as such so the players think that it's going to do something.
Yeah, for sure.
What about you, Neil?
So it's funny that you went that direction, because I went a somewhat similar direction. That like, I wanted to make Santa's evil counterpart, but instead of reindeer, it's all displacer beasts.
Oh god!
So like, no.
Yeah. There you go.
That's terrible.
Displacer reindeer.
Yeah. And then you're also on Dancer. Wait,
man,
Dancer, Prancer. Whatever.
Honestly, that skill from that evil Santa being able to like steer a sled with displacer beasts, like. Anyway, I would take a treant. I would take a treant, and in the middle of a snow-covered pine forest, evergreen forest, you have a treant that's covered in fairies that are glowing all different sorts of colors. And I think that this treant, maybe they're more than just a treant, but they're a fey lord or a fey lady of blessings. And so you can come across this treant of good cheer that blesses your party with some sort of gifts before they go deeper into the forest where there are dangers, something along those lines. So,
love it.
Question number 11. We got two left, guys. Question number 11. How do you or could you celebrate the holiday season with the players at your table? Chris?
Yeah, we're doing, we have a longer session where we'll get together in December for like 4 or 5 hours. Because we usually do like online for 2-hour sessions at a time. And then we do one longer one every so often. And we're going to do a Christmas gift swap where we'll randomly draw people's names out ahead of time, bring a gift of like $10 or $15 or less, and give it to the person at the table. So that's how we'll celebrate in like a week or so. That doesn't work out so well, time traveling podcasting, but a week from when we're recording this.
Yeah. Neil?
So what I historically do is a gift exchange at my table.
The best part about
Yeah, it's the answer I would go for. I mean, it's the kind of thing where it's like it's all stuff we'd probably buy for ourselves, and so, I mean, honestly, like, well, I guess I won't say what it is, just in case somebody listens or whenever it comes out. But basically, we got something promotionally that I had already bought for myself, so then I just kept the one sealed, and I'm like, done and done. So I know what I'm taking. But yeah, it's just a fun thing because, like I said, it's something small that maybe you wouldn't have even thought to buy for yourself, but if you knew about it, you probably would have. So yeah, gift exchange.
So traditionally, over the past 2+ years, every Christmas season, I do a white elephant with my players, otherwise known as a gift exchange. I don't think we need to go any more into it. Obviously, it's just a fun thing to do with your players. It's a wonderful way to just celebrate the season. All right, Neil, I've been the one asking the questions, but I'm going to let you round it out with question number 12 this year, giving a little bit of background to the question. We had a question, we changed it up, looking into next year. Take us away, Neil.
Yeah, so like one of this is like we look back, we look way forward, and so one of the things that got dropped that is probably one of the most exciting things of like in the D&D fandom is that the idea that for the 50th anniversary, a couple years from now, that the newest version is probably the most conservative way to mention it of Dungeons and Dragons will be released. So the idea is there something that you hope for to see or that you expect to see in this new version of Dungeons and Dragons? Chris.
So I love the deadliness of 5e, honestly. What I don't necessarily like about it is the ease of getting out of the deadliness after a session is done, with how easily it is for short rests and long rests to happen, and like the quickness of the recovery of characters, it seems like. And I know there's the whole like, well, it's not hit points, it's like essentially those are energy points, not like only the final blow is a thing that kills, the person. And I get all of that. But it does seem that it's rather easy, and maybe that's just because I don't plan enough encounters or whatever it is, but or maybe even just an option to make it more deadly and how that would factor in. And that could just be me taking away short rests. I mean, that, whatever that is in 5th edition, but I don't think I'm necessarily alone in that. So figuring out how that whole rest and recovery thing works a little bit differently, I think would be one thing I'm curious about. Neil.
Well, and I know they alluded to it. So the idea that the 5th edition books would still be compatible with whatever's happening. So the idea that it's more probably an iteration and may look something more like 3.5 was to 3. Maybe it's 5.5 is to 5. I don't know, because I'm not the world's biggest digital person. Like, I know, but I think part of it is like I really hope that they do a good job of having really successful digital pieces, just because that's where it needs to go. Like, I know that's not necessarily, that's a weird thing, I guess, for me to say, is like I know that I'm not a huge proponent of those, but I just understand how much more that could develop the brand and develop everything behind it, and how many more people it would bring in. So it's like more in-house digital components, because like you have Roll20, but that's always dependent on agreements and sharing and secondary things. D&D Beyond, while extremely close to the company, is also something that's not technically in-house. So yeah, I hope a lot of that digital stuff moves in-house, just to be more prolific.
Yeah, I know when we were talking about this a little bit before the episode, what could this be? What could this be? Neil, you even said, like, there's speculation on, is this like we had 3rd edition and then we had 3.5? Is this 5.5? Or is this alluding to 6th edition? I don't know if it was like an actual like Wizards of the Coast official thing, but I remember when 5th edition coming out, like there being a lot of talk about like this being the edition to move forward with. Like, we're not going to switch it around. We're keeping 5th edition around. And I don't know if that was an official thing, but I do like that mentality. I'd be okay with a 5.5. Let's get some options in, maybe even bringing some things in from other editions that players and DMs alike miss. But I'm going to be honest, like it's going to be hard for me if it's a 6th edition thing, because that's been hard for me through my whole life. You know, when we switched from VHS to DVDs, I had a lot of VHS, and I really resisted and was like, no, I don't like this. When we switched from DVDs to streaming, I didn't like it because I had a lot of DVDs. 3.5 to 5th edition was a struggle, but I also only owned 4 books, so it wasn't that big of a struggle. As I look at my 5th edition shelf, I will be really sad if 5th edition starts to fade, and I know eventually someday it probably will. And you know what? All I can say is I like streaming, and I liked DVDs over VHS, and I liked 5th edition and still like 5th edition a lot more than I like 3.5. So I'll get over it if that's what it is. So I'm a little bit of a curmudgeon that doesn't want change, but I think I also end up liking change once it happens. So I don't know what this could be, but I guess I'm hoping for like a 5.5 if we're having any sort of change to the edition. So that's what I'll be looking forward to. Well, guys, we've done it. Another Christmas episode in the DMB can, as we would say, as we've never said ever before, but as I just said right now. Yeah, this has been a great year and a lot of great episodes, and I look forward, as I know you guys do, to another year in 2022, of which we get to talk more D&D, because that's always the greatest thing to do. So, Chris, Neil, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. To all you listeners out there, Merry Christmas. We hope that this is a magical season for you in all different kinds of ways.
And may the sleigh dragon bring you so many presents.
You should have a gift exchange.
For sure.